Hello, my fellow bloggers. This is Christine Dobson again, coming to you live from the streets in Springfield. I'm actually driving right now. I just got off of work and I am on my way to King of Prussia to do family dinner with my family. A little tradition that's been going on for a little while. We try to get together and take time out of our hectic schedules so that we can come together and catch up and have fun and talk and just togetherness time. So excuse me if I look away from time to time because I have to keep my eyes on the road. But yeah, so yesterday was Super Tuesday and I thought that it was amazing that Donald Trump once again almost did a complete sweep. And they were talking on one of those political shows this morning, and they were asking a question for someone who seems to be so negatively looked at. How is he soaring so much in the polls every time the votes are cast? And one of the commentators made a very interesting comment. They said that he is actually saying what everybody is thinking, but just won't say. So even though a lot of people speak out so loudly against him, he really is secretly liked by more people than dislikes him. And they might have a point there because the polls are saying the same. And I was thinking about that. His campaign, Donald Trump goes around and he says whatever he feels is necessary to say, and he doesn't care who likes it or who doesn't. And I began to think about the church as a whole and how pastors and people who love God need to be the same way. Because although Donald Trump is doing this great campaign to be president of the United States, we are campaigning every day to get into heaven. The Lord is looking at our actions and he's writing down the things that we're doing every day on a daily basis, and he's casting his vote if we're getting in or if we're not. And it was interesting to me because what I find is missing in the church today is that we are sparing the rod and therefore spoiling the child. Because a lot of pastors are so reliant on tithes and offering that they can't really say the things that needs to be said to the congregation because they're afraid of losing members. Because if they lose key members or if they offend key members, they might not get the money that is needed to operate the church or operate their own expenses or whatever they do with the money. So a lot of times in churches, I find that there are sinful things going on rampantly. And nobody is really addressing them, and the people are suffering for it. Because it is our job as pastors of the congregation to let people know what they are doing wrong and to expose sin. We have to cry loud and spare not. If we ran campaigns like Donald Trump, we might offend some people. And some people may leave our congregations, but that's okay. If people know that you stand for God and you won't stand for anything less, then they won't come into our churches with nonsense. And we won't have sickness in the body because sin equals sickness. And if we want a healthy church, and a church that is striving and thriving off of holiness, being set apart for the master's use, and striving for a church that is doing the right thing. Sure, we may fall down sometime, but we don't practice sin. You know, we practice righteousness. And if we want that type of church, then we have to cry loud and spare not. And there are things that need to be said that people are not going to always want to hear. However, they need to be said so that the church can stay well and that everyone that comes into the church will be well. Because that should be our prime reason for coming into the church, whatever day that you worship, whether it be Saturday or whether it be Sunday. It should be to give people the truth, not what they want to hear. So although a lot of people do not like Donald Trump, I have to say that I like his method. He lets you know exactly the way that he feels. He tells you exactly the way that he feels that it is. There is no one, if he gets elected, can say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that he felt that way. And there should be no one that comes to our church that does not know what the Lord stands for, what the Lord says can be done, what the Lord will not tolerate, because we have to understand that we serve a God that is sinless and not sinful. And because of that, we cannot let sin run rampant in our churches. We have to set a standard, and we cannot lower that standard to make anybody happy. We cannot lower that standard to keep more members. We cannot lower that standard for anything. God has set the standard, and that standard is Yeshua, and some people call him Jesus. And that standard says that we are holy, which means we are set apart for the master's use. That standard says that there is no sin that will dominate our lives. That standard says that we cannot live any old kind of way. That standard says that we have to do what God says, not what we want to do. That we have to uphold the standards of the Lord, and that is it. So with that being said, we have to run effective campaigns for the Most High. What does he say do? We should be doing it. How does he say we should be living? That's how we should live. What does he say we should be saying? That's what we should be saying. So we have to run campaigns that are effective, that gets people to understand that we serve a God of standards. And those standards we should live by, and those standards we should keep. And that, everyone, is your moment in ministry.